attorney, and today is time set aside for a walkthrough on an officer-involved critical incident that happened on November 4 of 2024. It involved the United States Marshal Service Officer Charlie Sandness, use of deadly force. The investigation was done by Salt Lake City Police Department protocol team comprised of law enforcement officers that were employed by agencies other than the United States Marshals Service. That use of force by Charlie Sandness against Daniel Meinhardt, who was the person who was the target of that use of force. What I just want to sort of say is that we have very limited information, but although the information that we have is quite extensive. Let me go through the facts that were developed by Deputy Sandness' use of deadly force. And this presentation that was presented to us, should any additional or different facts subsequently come to light, of course our opinions and conclusions would subsequently be changed. So here are the following facts that we do know. On November 4th of 2024, on or about at 2:30 p.m., a VFAST team member located fugitive Daniel Meinhardt in a painted gray Dodge Charger at Liberty Park in Salt Lake City. Just as a point of reference, Mr. Meinhardt had multiple felony warrants out for his arrest. His probation agent had also contacted VFAST in an attempt to locate Mr. Meinhardt. The VFAST team was then called and advised that Mr. Meinhardt had multiple felony warrants and had a violent criminal history, which included multiple aggravated assaults and an attempted murder of a police officer. He also had a history of fleeing, was a gang member, and had possibly a firearm, and had made recent statements about not going back to jail. With the assistance of the Utah Department of Public Safety Star 8 helicopter, VFAST loosely followed Mr. Meinhardt's vehicle around Salt Lake Valley as VFAST members responded to the call and prepared to apprehend him. So at approximately 4:06 p.m., Mr. Meinhardt entered the parking lot of a Birch Brothers Service and Tire Center in Sugar House, and VFAST came up with a plan to box in his vehicle. At 4:16, you will see that as officers in unmarked vehicles moved in on the north entrance of the lot, Mr. Meinhardt began driving and then fled. Officers pursued him with lights and sirens activated through the lot and south onto Lincoln Street, where Mr. Meinhardt swerved around several oncoming unmarked patrol vehicles, almost hitting them, and drove up onto the sidewalk. In the process, knocked over a light pole in the parking strip and continued on the sidewalk before colliding into a brick wall and getting subsequently pinned in from behind by pursuing unmarked vehicles. Officers quickly exited their vehicles with weapons drawn and began giving commands as a West Jordan PD K-9 officer vehicle reversed in the middle of the roadway facing northbound so that its rear was parallel to the front of Mr. Meinhardt's vehicle, and another unmarked truck parked in the roadway north of the K-9 vehicle. So they started to position their vehicles so they could take cover because the suspect vehicle was stopped. Officers took cover behind the vehicles in the roadway as Mr. Meinhardt, whose vehicle had become pinned between the wall and a light pole. His front passenger corner of was impacted by a wall, and his rear driver corner by the light pole. Continued to rev his engine and spinning his tires, producing a large amount of smoke, falling debris, and noise. Mr. Meinhardt remained in his vehicle and did not comply with any commands. At approximately 4:18 p.m., Agent Welch, who was positioned in the roadway to the north of Mr. Meinhardt's vehicle, fired a less lethal 40-millimeter round through the heavily tinted back windshield to break the window and get OC gas inside that vehicle. Officers called for a flashbang and Deputy Quezada then threw a flashbang near Mr. Meinhardt's vehicle. Agent Welch then fired a second less lethal 40-millimeter round through the back windshield. As Mr. Meinhardt then partially rolled down his driver window, but put his left hand out the window and had his right hand holding a black object across his chest with his finger indexed, and yelled that he was not going back and he was going to kill. As Mr. Meinhardt continued to move with his right hand holding the black object across his chest, Deputy Lambert fired another less lethal 40-millimeter round at the driver's window, and Deputy Sandness fired 4 9-millimeter rounds from his handgun. Notably, when the shots were fired, Deputy Sandness was approximately, we would come to find out later, approximately 8.5 yards away in a kneeling position behind the rear corner of the K9 vehicle, and with a direct line of sight to Mr. Meinhardt, and he was holding a ballistic shield in his left hand and his pistol in his right hand. And immediately behind him were Deputy Lambert, equipped with the less lethal weapon to his left and was subsequently exposed from cover, and Deputy Edmonds, equipped with a rifle to his right, as well as K9 Sergeant Jones and K9 who were in the roadway further behind and to the side. It's important to note that Deputy Sandness did interview with the investigators, and he later described to the investigators, so when Meinhardt rolled down his window, I could see he had his left hand out as soon as the window came down, and he then showed us like this, and then I saw his right hand on his chest like this, and I could see something black like across his chest. And Meinhardt, starts yelling, "I'm not going back," and something along the lines of, "I'm going to kill." And I can't recall exactly what I did here. But I did hear, "I'm going to kill." And then when he rolled down his window, he started leaning back behind behind that pillar and starts doing this, and he was showed it through his motions. I could see him like turkey peeking. He's looking at our group towards the rear of the vehicle, and I could see something black in his hands. And he starts looking behind towards the front of the car, the other group. I don't recall who was at the front. I know that Rick Quezada was towards the front of Mike Jones' car, and I don't know who else, but I could see him doing this, like he's trying to decide what his next move is. But I see something black in his hands, and I yelled out, "Hey, he's got something in his hands. I'm just watching him." And I hear Lambert yell, "He's got a gun." And I can see Meinhardt looking just back and forth like he's trying to make a decision. And then for me, I was worried that when I saw that hand moving, that he was going to shoot. And with Lambert and Devin, which is Officer Edmonds, I knew that they didn't have that much cover. And I was worried that, I did fear that they were going to get shot. So when Meinhardt peeked back out like this, I saw his hands. That's when I decided to shoot. And I don't recall how many rounds, maybe 3, 4, but I did continue shooting until I saw him kind of fall over and he was no longer a threat. After the shots were fired, Agent Well fired 2 additional less lethal 40-millimeter rounds through the rear of the vehicle, one through the rear driver's side window to brake hit and to see inside, and one through the rear windshield. As Mr. Meinhardt's left hand continued to be seen out his window, officers continued giving him commands, but Mr. Meinhardt continued not to comply. After several minutes after Mr. Meinhardt's left hand stopped moving and officers realized that he might be injured, officers deployed a drone to look inside the vehicle and determine that he had nothing in his hands. Officers then tactically approached the vehicle, pulled Mr. Meinhardt out, placed him in handcuffs, and began to render medical aid. Mr. Meinhardt was transported via ambulance to a hospital where he received treatment for his injuries and subsequently recovered from them. And during the investigations, investigators did not locate any firearm in Mr. Meinhardt's person or in his vehicle. However, they did locate a black cell phone on the driver's seat, as well as a shotgun-shaped lighter and a red Bic lighter on the floorboard behind the driver's seat. The other thing that is important that I just want to share with you, that we also were able to talk to the other officers who were used less lethal, as well as other officers who shared information with investigators. And through their observations, they did corroborate that there was something in the hand of Mr. Meinhardt, and that he was moving, and so that was corroborated by them. The other thing that's important to note, that what made our, having had this information, the other thing, that challenge that we had, is that, as you know, the United States Marshal Service does not support the use of video recordings. But there was a partial recording with the K-9 officer who was there, who was a West Jordan K-9 officer. And it was also quite fortuitous for us that Star 8 was there. So that's what our team had to work through. And then we had to try to reconstruct based on that limited information. And that's what I'm going to share with you at this time. So one of the things to do, so if we move to some of the what we did have. So before I go into this, there's a couple of things that I want to outline. While this is the single biggest source of information that we have that is visually available to us, and also, which I appreciate, the use of force officer Sandness's interview with us, as well as some of the information. We had to, of course, try to put this together. There are certain things that we were able to look at. I'm just going to point them out in terms of timestamps. At 17:17:53, there is the first less lethal force that's used by Welch. At 17:18, 11 seconds, there's a flashbang from Cazada. At 17:18, 17 seconds, there is a light in the window that we were able to capture. At 17:80:44, second less than lethal by Welch. We can only hear him say he fired less than lethal, which we do not see. At 17:19, at 19 seconds, the third less lethal by Lambert, which we also, from our investigation, which we believe was simultaneously shot by the lethal force by Deputy Sandness. And then, of course, 17:19:34, the fourth less lethal, which is fired by Welch. So as we started to piece that together, then go ahead and at this point play that if you would. This is at a point when he's been followed. He's at the Burt Brothers in Sugar House. That is his vehicle right there. He has walked inside. His ex works there, and there's concern for her safety. He will come back out and get in this car, and he will stay stationary there. And of course, he will go and pull in here, but he does not move. The manager knew that his ex was in there. She was at that time hiding inside in the store. She was concerned. So he will go and park here, and you will see again. Now there are times we will speed this up when there's nothing really going on. So they come out and they tell him he can't park there because he's blocking their.
2100 South, just east of Lincoln Street, and then an exit on Lincoln Street just south of 21st South. So if you guys can get those tickets, I think they're going to give them
So he talks to him, and they go back in. He will now pull his car and move it back. And then what he does is he parks it right there into that first stall. And he will remain there for approximately 10 minutes.
Where are you
So,
walking to get service? Looks like he's waiting for his mother. Someone come out to talk to him right now. Two employees.
So the other thing to note is that the helicopter, which has been monitoring him, is going to run out of fuel in 30 minutes. So at this point, they decide that they need to at least effectuate a takedown. So that has been, so you will see vehicles that are going to come. And it'll sometimes change from color to heat map. So they're now trying to coordinate the takedown. He remains there. He pulls in here again, and he's waiting there. And they're waiting for the officers to catch up at this point. So you'll see entry from here from officers, and then you'll also see it on this side where the suspect will flee. As he pulls up, he notices that they are, so he takes off. You can see the other officers responding, trying to pin him, but he's going to go around them. And then he's going to get onto the sidewalk here. He gets on the sidewalk, and he's hit one pole, and he's going to hit this, and you can see a jar, and the other vehicle now is pinned. This is the canine vehicle that's going to go into position. Officers are out there going into containment mode, and then you can see the spinning of the wheels and the smoke that is coming up. So he is now lodged, but he is revving up the engine. And again, officers are trying to position. You can see debris flying out from his vehicle. Now this turns to a heat map. Okay. This stuff, debris that's flowing, is from his wheels that are revving. And keep an eye over here. We see the less lethal. And when we were looking at it, it happens really quick, but there's a flash that we saw from there. And this is where the officers are going to ultimately position themselves with Lambert, Edmonds, and Sandness, and the canine officer. This is the flashbang that was thrown as subsequent to the less lethal. You can see the engine is heated up. And there was a slight little flash that you will see that we were able to capture. Now, this is all the footage that we have, so we have to work with this both from interviews to reconstruct. So there's you hear audibly the shoot less lethal through the window. Again, this is the vehicle. The canine vehicle is here, and on the front there is a positioning that has happened. Then as they move down here, the canine officer, they will go down here, and that's where the lethal force is going to be used from. And that debris, which we saw, was when both the decision for the other less lethal and lethal was used. So that was something that caught our attention. And after the lethal is used, we believe there was also less lethal used again from the back. And you hear pop the rear window. At that point, Mr. Meinhardt is inside. And so this is the point of the stick that's there. Okay. So that's what we had to work with. That was the only sort of evidence that was available, other than there was a video that was there. So go to the next one if you would. Now this was important. We're very lucky that at least Sergeant Jones had his video, because this was important for us for several reasons. So first of all, you can see that the Meinhardt's vehicle is here. The other thing to note is that his window had a tint to it, limo tint to it. So it was dark, that they could not get line of sight. But it is important, as we went through the investigation, that the window does come down, and that's going to play a very important critical role. The other thing that's really important is that this gave us positioning. So what do we see here? This right here is Officer Sandness. He has retrieved from the canine a shield. So he's got the shield in his left hand. He's got his handgun in the right. He is in a kneeling position in terms of where he is. You have Agent Edmonds, who is crouched up right on top of him, but he does not have the advantage of the shield, but he is there, and he's there on rifle. Here is Deputy Lambert, who is, of course, positioned to the left and outside, but he is much more exposed. And that becomes important because when Sandness gives us his interview, that is something he is cognizant of. That is something he's aware of. And so he is here with the less lethal. Now, what happens here is that this window, which was tinted, as it comes down, both Lambert and Sandness talk about it. Lambert says that as that window comes down and is down there, he also can see something which is a dark object on the chest in the chest area. Sandness also says that he sees that. And as there's an exchange and he's yelling, he's not going to go back, and they both say they hear something about killing or something. And as that window starts to go up, Lambert tells us that he knows that if that window goes back up, they won't have line of sight. And at that point, he makes the decision that if he fires a less lethal, that he can break the glass, and so they can have line of sight. And more crucially, he believes that the secondary impact of that might also hit whatever is in his hand and maybe disable that thing. And that conceptually and his perception is really important because he too is appreciating that there's something that's there. Sandness, who is there and has that direct line of sight, and this is important because this is about 8.5 yards, and he has both line of sight and visual, and also they are in his direct line of sight if he has a weapon. So Sandness, through his interview, communicates that he sees something, is there, and he kind of sees some turkey peeking this way. So if he has it, you'll be looking at it this way. He sees that there's something on his chest, and he kind of sees them doing this. And he perceives that it might be a gun, but crucially, at that point, through that window, about approximately where the camera is there, he could also just as easily fire at them. And that's important. As I've always said, what is crucial for our analysis is what is going through the officer's mind at that moment when the decision to fire is made. And what we were able to piece together, that it happens almost simultaneously. There is really no appreciable difference. When Lambert fires his less lethal, and as I said, Lambert is sitting right here, Sandness is here. So when he fires simultaneously, which is a loud bang, he fires simultaneously as well. And what was important through the interviews is that Lambert says he does not hear initially the firing from Sandness, and Sandness does not hear the firing from Lambert. That tells me the close proximity within which that decision occurred. And they were both sort of responding to that. So this, one of the few pictures that we have at that ground level, became highly critical to us for the purposes of that analysis. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do, here, the purpose of this, we will play the clip. As I said, the only body cam. It is from West Jordan officer, Canine Officer Sergeant Jones. Go ahead and play that. You can see the role of the less lethal there. that's the other shot. That's the less lethal. So we were able to at least get auditory clues from this. And this again shows you how clustered they were to each other and how exposed. And they will eventually go and extract him out and render medical aid to him. After the initial volley of 4 shots by Officer Sanders happened, they then there were also a less lethal that came through. Now, of course, the body camera goes longer than that. So, again, this was not fully disclosed to us. There was a certain clips that the Marshal Service did, which I wish they would not, because I think it is critical. And I've said over and over again, these things actually help us. They do not harm us. Okay, so the next one is, this is important because, so we were able to then go back, and again, remember, the vehicle is here. This gave us relative positioning. And as I said, the action that we saw were really contained to over here. We were able to see through even the heat stamp as we went through it, that this is the area you need to look at, because that was where one other less lethal was. And then as that shots occur, the positioning of the cluster that happens here, and then the subsequent lethal that is used from this positioning here. So I think, is that go ahead, okay, so go back again, so stop. So as we sort of started to go frame by frame, we were able to see. So I want you to draw your attention to here, and you will see a red box that will come up. So as we went frame by frame, so keep your eye there, we could actually see the moment that the less lethal was fired, as well as, because it's a much more bigger sort of object, that we could actually see the streak of it. So go ahead and play that. There it is, right there. You can see. One more time. There it is, right there. So that was what we were able to see, and to attribute that less lethal that came from that positioning that happened over here. And that was the first less lethal round that was fired by Welch. The other thing that I wanted to show to you is that as we came, then we started to, again, look at it very meticulously. I want to draw your attention to this space, because then what happens is there's the flashbang that happens. And then we were able to go and capture that. So go ahead and play that. So you see that object that you see moving? That is the flashbang, and then we were able to freeze that. So do that one more time now that they know. And this is the heat signature from that flashbang. So here's the object being thrown. There's the flashbang, and here's the circular heat signature and the residue of the heat signature. So we were able to capture that and document that as well. Okay? Then the other thing that we were able to see as we started to position everybody is, so again, the interviews that were done, subsequently Meinhardt, who survived, talked about it, and he said he remembers lighting a cigarette. He says that that's what he did. Now, nobody else saw the lighting of the cigarette, but remember, the other thing that we knew was there was ostensibly perception of officers who saw an object in the hand. So go ahead and play this for a second. Right there, that little flash that we see right there is consistent with the potential of maybe lighting a cigarette, right? Now that's important. He at least told us that, so as we're looking at it, we can't argue against that, but that also lends credence that he may have had an object in his hand, if that's what it was, and that would be not inconsistent with the observations and perceptions of the officers who were there. So we were able to certainly capture that as we started to put together and to corroborate what we were seeing. So go to the next one, if you would. So here is this one. In this video, you hear Agent Wells say that he fired another round. The round was never seen on the camera, but the audio that we could listen to helped us, again, start to piece those elements together from the statements we were getting, and which is our job to objectively verify and try to construct what happened. So go ahead and play that. Yeah, through the back window. So he's talking about just sent another one. So that's the second one. So we were able to capture, at least in real time, that was captured on the video. So if we go to the next one, again, in this third one, what's going to show is the third less lethal round fired by officers, and it was fired by Deputy Lambert, who was behind. Is that cluster that I talked to you about? And he was left of Deputy Sandness, and we believe that this was fired simultaneously, and I'll tell you in a couple of reasons why. So now what I want you to do is, as you can see, this is where they were positioned. And as I told you, Lambert was on the outside of Sandness, who was crouched in front of him. And so I'm going to go back. Go ahead and play this, and we'll see. You can see the streak right there, and then you will see a debris right there. That thing, projectile going up right there. So that is consistent with that we could at least articulate objectively. Play that one more time. You can see the streak, and then that object that goes right up there. That is consistent with that non-lethal also. And that is also important because what Lambert tells us is that he wants to break that glass. He is perceiving an object there, and if he is thinking, I can break the glass, I'm going to aim at it, and there's a secondary impact might be that it might be able to dislodge whatever is in his hand. That's important because once Lambert fires, now he doesn't necessarily immediately hear Sandness because we think that volley started at the same time. But when he's reloading his less lethal to get another shot, he notices as that moment happens quickly, he notices bullet holes in the frame of the vehicle, which were not there when he fired his initial less lethal. So that helps us compress the time and the decision which were fired simultaneously, because he fires, but he doesn't appreciate hearing that. He reloads as he comes up. He sees the bullet holes that are consistent with the firing by Sandness. And so that was really important for us to be able to at least capture that objectively as well. The next one that I want to show you is that here was the fourth less lethal round fired by Agent Wells. We remember he's fired one, then he's fired some in the background that we were able to capture. He fires one more round that you hear on the body cam camera, but you do not see it on video nor helicopter at that, and we'll talk about it. Go ahead and do that. I'm sorry, okay? Yeah. So again, go back and play, so you'll notice this. So we were able to isolate, so go back, now you see the red square, that we can see the streak of that less lethal that's coming in. And that also gave us a trajectory consistent with the statements that were made that is going to penetrate the back window, which is also here, and the back, the rear window right there. And so so we were able to slowly reconstruct that. So go to the next one, if you will. So this was an overhead that we could do that, again, in a real space there beyond the heat map. Here is the vehicle. Here is the positioning of the suspect's vehicle. Excuse me. And this was where we had Lambert, Edmonds on long gun, Lambert with less lethal, and Sandness, who is right here. And again, and then of course my canine officer is over here. This is important because it's we measured it was 8.5 yards, and it is direct line of sight. And so as officers share their perceptions, objectively, we want to be able to demonstrate they had both the opportunity and line of sight, so we can corroborate that. And this gives us that. The other thing this is important, again, as I mentioned, to the perception of Deputy Sanders, not only as he gives us, but he is appreciating not only what he's seeing and what he's perceiving and why he's acting, but the proximity of danger that he is also appreciating to Deputy Lambert and to Edmonds and himself at that point. Okay, so go to the next one. So here was that post-incident as they started to, as we sort of went through that vehicle. Here were the objects that we were able to recover. Now, I can't tell you because we were not inside there, but these did, of course, mean something to us as we're reviewing. Here is a dark cell phone that is right there. And as I said, there's a lot of debris and a lot of stuff that's going on, but we were able to also find this lighter. And this is a lighter that, again, looks like a little gun or whatever. And so what was actually in his hand, what was really there, I couldn't tell you for certain, but certainly through the interviews that we had and as we sort of constructed this, we know that certainly if there was an object, if that was a lighter or if it was a phone or that other item, that it is not inconsistent with both what we see as a heat flash occasionally in there based on what Meinhardt is saying, as well as from the line of sight that what officers may have also seen and perceived as a part of that. So as we went through this analysis and went through this, our conclusion is that the officer, Deputy Sanders' use of force was reasonable in terms of his perception. It is supported by objective facts. And if we were to file charges against him, I think he would be entitled to an affirmative defense of justification. And based on that, we declined to file any charges. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So you talk a lot on perception in this one.
Yeah.
Is this decision based, I guess, on totality of everything? Because they never saw what was in his hand, and he never pointed anything at them, right?
Yeah. So absolutely, that's a great question, Pat. So remember, so when we do this analysis, there are two components that I'm looking at. I'm looking at what is the decision point for the officer when he or she makes the decision to pull the trigger and working back from it, and then the context within which this happens. So the context is that they have under surveillance somebody with multiple felony warrants who has been known to have a gun before, was in his history was charged with and prosecuted in 2002 with an attempted murder of a police officer using his vehicle. They know that he has said that he doesn't want to be taken. So that's the context. They're following him and they're trying to figure out a moment where they can execute and take him into custody. Also, what they didn't know, but he had come down here, and his ex was in this place. She had, of course, had conversations with probation agent, and the probation agent was concerned about this felon. Within the briefing that they had, they now tried to execute a stop. He takes off, which is known to be fleeing. He is now going up on a sidewalk in an area which is a shopping area. He comes to a stop. He is spinning his wheels. He is not being non-compliant. The windows are tinted, and they are using right now less lethal force. And at that point, when the windows do go down, the perception is absolutely spot on. There is a concern. So the question becomes, as we've talked about, what is the perception of the officer and what is reasonable in the totality of that information and the context that they're in? What we know is we're 8.5 yards away. I've got an officer who's on site and has a clear view. He sees something that it looks like dark in his hand. He's concerned that it might be a gun. He says he's got something in his hand. Somebody hears him saying could be a gun. At that point, he's sitting there. He's in direct fire, but he also, which is great that he gave us the interview, right? the issue isn't whether there was an actual gun. The question is, was there an object that could be perceived as a gun that is informing the decision of the officer in the totality of the circumstances in this moment? And in that moment, the officer is perceiving an object, knowing in the context that he's at, but also two other colleagues who are with him, and he's appreciating that while he has the shield and he's crouched down, Lambert is standing to the outside of him, greater exposure to that line of fire. And he's seeing him peek, and if he's thinking it's a gun, it is just the movement of the gun that can actually end up shooting, and he can fire at them. So he's perceiving that, and he's making the decision based on all of those things that are happening. Simultaneously, Lambert is seeing this on the outside. He sees the glass go down. It's been a tinted thing, and he sees an object, ostensibly something that's dark. There's other officers who sort of say it, but to me it was really important because where the deadly force was used from, within that zone and cluster, what was their perception? Lambert is seeing something similar, and he, in fact, as he gives us the interview, he says, the decision that I made to fire was because this window was going up. I wanted to break that window because we wanted to have the line of sight, and I thought that if I break through that or I hit it, maybe I can hit that thing that he's holding in his hand. Now that's his decision from the less lethal and his perception and his rationale to fire. At the same time, simultaneously, as you have is Deputy Sandness saying, I see something that is dark in his hand, he's turkey peeking, and I am at that moment afraid. I hear him say, I'm not going back, and I hear something, I'm going to kill. I don't know what that drifts up to, and I'm laser focused at that moment, and I make the decision because I am afraid that he's going to shoot me, and he's going to certainly put at risk the two officers that are with him. So within that perception, then our questions become, per our statute from the legislature, was that a reasonable fear that is for that officer at that moment? And given the objective reality of that context, it is not an unreasonable fear in terms of what he saw, perceived, and acted upon. And that is why that affirmative defense is there, and that's why we have to go through that analysis in that way. And you've heard me use this example before. It's not just the purity of the subjective fear. If I have a 10-foot, 15-foot chain link fence between you and you pull out a knife, you can stick electrodes to me, and I may be subjectively very reasonably afraid of that because you pulled out a knife. But it would be objectively unreasonable for me to pull my gun out and shoot at you because there's a 15-foot chain link fence between us. So I have to take the objective reality with the subjective fear and meld them together at the decision point of firing that weapon. And in this context, given that what we had to reconstruct and what we had, the team's conclusion was it was not an unreasonable fear or decision for that officer to fire. Therefore, he would be entitled to the affirmative defense of justification, and therefore we are going to decline not to file any charges.
Right. And you kind of already answered this, but so usually these critical incidents are singular events based on what's happening right then.
Yeah.
In this case, is criminal history that the police knew about it, and that was a factor in this? Could you take that as a
I think that it was, you cannot discount it, right? Because this was information, whenever VFAS gets together, they're trying to figure out who is this person. And they were aware of this person's history. I am not suggesting to in any way that history is the basis of their firing. What I'm suggesting is that history is a footnote in their understanding, and then how it gets played out in real life that they're observing. And even if that history wasn't there, the decision that is being made is objectively supportable. I have a person who is non-compliant. He's revved up the engine. He's got dark tinted windows. I have officers who are positioned. He is not responding. And when he rolls down the window, he is yelling to them, you're not taking me back, and I'm going to kill. And at that moment, that officer is seeing something dark that is in his hand, that he sees here, and he is reacting to that. and he's close enough, and it is not an unreasonable fear that this person he could have said, I give up, whatever. Those individual facts can come into the equation. He tried to flee from them. He stops. He's revving his engine up. They have introduced pepper spray inside the vehicle. He is still not coming out. He's lowering that window down. He's yelling to them that he's not going to be compliant. The officers are seeing something there. Independently of anything else, even in the context of that totality of facts, it would not be unreasonable for Deputy Sanders to be afraid for himself or others. But I cannot divorce now, when I put everything together, that I have to give credence to that.
They all knew he was
Yeah.
charged with attempted murder. of an officer.
Yeah, I'm sure, when they do the debriefing. That's why when we do other OICIs, we all go through every chatter on the radio, because information is being relayed to officers who are responding to the scene. They're taking that data and they're trying to contextualize it in the encounter that they're having. And to say that those bits of information are completely left out, that would be irrational, because we're human beings. We soak up that information. So that is the overall totality. But even as I go to the micro component of it, I think it still would fit within that statutory framework. Any other questions?
Is he planning on filing any charges against the the officers that shot him?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is he planning on filing any charges against the officers that shot him?
The officer, the suspect?
The suspect, yeah.
The suspect was charged by our office. He has subsequently been convicted of it, and my understanding is he's at prison. What he wants to do is going to be his choice, that I'm not privy to. So, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.